Sup homies, it's been a while, and if you're wondering where I've been, honestly, I don't know either. Now, before any of you start committing unspeakable acts because I didn't upload the next Poppy Playtime part, I may have underestimated the size of these chapters and therefore need more time to complete building, but the video will come out eventually, so no need to kill me just yet. Well, honestly, I just don't want to continue building at this point. I'm stuck in the school part in chapter 3 and let's just say this place gives me horrendous amounts of PTSD for multiple reasons. Anyways, you saw the thumbnail and the title and you clicked on it, which means you kinda know what to expect. Now to give you some context anyways, I am a huge fan of Star Wars. And that's basically all the context you need, so let's get to the next point. Some few of you who know Star Wars might be wondering why I chose Yavin as my first build for the Star Wars project, since it's not the most recognizable place in Star Wars, and the reason is very simple. I watched Andor while stealing my neighbor's lawnmower and thought the place looked sick as fuck. And if you don't want me to steal your lawnmower as well, you could consider subscribing and leaving a like.
Do it.
First things first, I needed a map to build the Temple of Yavin on, so I built it up World Painter and created a very fast landscape that I would use as a base for future construction. The result may not look very professional or even good at all, but it was very fast, and I think that's also worth something. Now to start building the temple, I first created a large circle that I will turn into the landing space later, and marked the first temple layer with some wool. This recording also appears to be the only one I have of creating the base structure of the temple, because apparently my game was having a terrible time rendering the footage, which ended in 50% of the footage being unusable, so let's just pretend that the progress always looked like that. After that, I added some more detail as well as the hangar doors, painted the whole thing with mud bricks and added the peak of the temple. To wrap things up, I added some interior like hangars, sleeping quarters and meeting rooms, as well as some vines to give the entire thing a more ancient look. And due to replay mode being a bitch, that's all the footage I really have of the building process of Yavin, so let's just pretend these trees spawned in on their own. Now I could just call it a day here and let the cinematic shots roll, but I just built the most famous rebel base in Star Wars, and what would the rebel base be without some cool ass spaceships? I already built both an X-Wing and a Y-Wing a year ago, but that's not even close to being enough of spaceships. The first ships I wanted to add were both an A-Wing and a U-Wing, which I started building on. Both of them came along very nice and quick, and I personally am very proud, especially on how the A-Wing turned out. I may add more ships later on, like a B-Wing, but at the moment I'm very proud of what I have. Though I also wanted some bigger ships, and what better spacecraft would there be to build other than the Millennium Falcon? I started by building up a rough shape with different kinds of wool, adding some details and coloring it with different shades of grey and white, mostly stone, andesite and diorite. And since I also watched Star Wars Rebels and I'm a big fan of the ghosts, I might as well add it as well. So I first went and built a small version of the Phantom to get a good scale for the entire thing, and then started building up the ghost the same way as I built the Falcon. Though I have to admit that building the ghost was a huge pain in the ass, I think it turned out very well and can definitely be displayed alongside all the other spaceships. So the last thing to do was adding the ships to the temple alongside with some crates, bridges and lights that I built to finish things up. And with that, the project is complete. Is what I would say if I was actually satisfied with the result. As I previously mentioned, I had big problems with replay mode for this project, and 3 minutes of raw footage is not nearly enough to fill an entire video. So I could just add 5 minutes of black screen to make the video look like an actual good product, or I don't pretend and come up with an idea. And the sad idea is just I built another planet, because why not? Since I just watched Andor Season 2 again, and I personally am a huge fan of the new planets they introduced to us, there were 2 of them that stood out the most to me. Gorman and Mina Rao. And since Gorman was way too big to put for me at this point and I just wanted to get the video done, I went for Mina Rao. There are basically just 3 things I had to build. This cool looking village in the mountain, these giant silos, and wheat. I started by marking some walkways and building the mountain for the village, before building up some containers and moisture farmers that I could copy and paste around the world. Then I started building a layout for housings, as well as marking a pathway that would connect the buildings with each other. As I built up the houses, I also added some crates, tables and some pieces of cloths hanging between buildings and poles to make the place look less empty. I added trees to the mountain and a railway to transport goods from the top of the mountain down to the fields. I built one more house isolated from the village, as well as the giant silos that are depicted in the show right next to it. I just built up one side and flipped it to the other before pasting the entire thing further right to add some more detail to the landscape. The very last thing to do was adding the wheat, which was a very fast process thanks to the Axiom stamp tool. Now that I also have Mina row finished, I am finally satisfied with how the project turned out and I can call it good. I hope you guys enjoyed watching the video just as much as I enjoyed making it, even though it took like 3 months to complete, which wasn't my intention. I was very busy with final exams and planning a vacation and some more stuff. The next video will most likely be the next Poppy Playtime chapter, which I'm currently working on as I speak. But anyways, if you have any ideas for future content, let me know in the comments and I'll see you in the next one.
Goodbye.